is M. Somashekar. I'm a journalist, now a freelance journalist based in Hyderabad. I am delighted on behalf of the Guruswamy Center to invite all of you to today's panel discussion. Has set both the mood and the context for today's gathering, and the topic, as all of you are aware, is Hyderabad, September 1948, integration or liberation. We thought since there is renewed interest in what happened during that time, thanks to recent developments, especially after the formation of the Telangana state, this will be a good occasion to have an insightful discussion. And today we have four distinguished speakers. Our own Mohan Guruswamy, an analyst, and who's been generous in this center, establishing the center. We have Vice Air Marshal retired Arjun Subramaniam. We have Professor Bhangya Bhukya from the University of Hyderabad, and Syed Inam-ur-Rahman, whom we popularly call as Ghayur in our midst today. I'll just say a few words to set the context for today's discussion. You know, historically, if you look at September 13 to 17 was the time when Operation Polo, or the Indian Army's assault on the Nizams, and the annexation, or liberation as people now call, happened. So today being the day one, we thought we'll have the discussion before all the political activity starts and the whole thing becomes a bit more chaotic. So the renewed interest in what happened during that time, what is the role of the Indian Army, what was the intention of the Nizam, was he trying to become bigger, was he not interested, was he putting up a resistance, and also what was the role of the communist movement, the Congress party, the Arya Samajis, and various organizations who played an important role during that period. A lot of grey areas, a lot of interesting information that some of the speakers today have delved into. We would be listening to them very soon. And also the issue has been brought to the center stage by the BJP in the last few years as part of the political growth for the party. And recently Amit Shah also declared that September 17th will be as a day of Hyderabad liberation, making it a more controversial issue. So in this background, the discussion perhaps we would like to have would be a presentation of 10 to 15 minutes by each speaker. And, Mohan Guruswamy will moderate the session, and also a question answer by the audience at the end of the session. I'll briefly introduce the speakers for the evening and invite them onto the dais. I request Mohan Guruswamy to please come to the dais. Mohan Guruswamy is an analyst quite known for his bold views, and incidentally his father, N.K. Guruswamy, played a very important role in the transfer of the power from the Nizam state to the Hyderabad state, and he is a reservoir of information. At his home itself there are so much of information and documentation about the entire events. I am sure we'll have a lot of interesting things to listen to from him. Next we have Air Vice Marshal Arjun Subramaniam. Please come to the dais. So Air Marshal actually is having a roaring second innings, as they say, after flying Sukhois, Mirages, MiGs, and winning the Ati Visist Seva medal. He's turned into an author, a speaker, and he's quite popular now with universities and academia. He has written 2 books which are quite popular, and he is associated with Ashoka University, speaking at the Kautilya Institute of Public Policy, the Fletcher School, and also the Harvard Asia Center. His 2 books, India's Wars and Full Spectrum, cover all the wars between 1947 to 71 and also later on. His focus has been also on Hyderabad and Operation Polo, so we thought he'll be a fit person to give us the army version and what really the army did, because a lot of people have different interpretations of what the Indian Army did. The next speaker is Professor Bhangya Bhukya, our panelist. He is heading the University of Hyderabad History Department. Professor Bhukya has specialized in modern Indian history. He is a PhD from the University of Warwick in UK. Interestingly, he has also had a long innings of teaching in the Osmania University at the Nizam College and also FLU before coming to the University of Hyderabad. His current interests are in doing research on Adivasis. He has also done extensive work on the Lambadas under the Nizam and the suppression, and also the Gonds of the Deccan Plateau. So he has done a lot of work in the tribal areas and has very interesting insights into Telangana's history and culture over the last 300-400 years. The final speaker, our own independent journalist from Hyderabad, is a very familiar face on television and television debates. I invite Dr. Syed Inam-ur-Rahman Ghayur. When I called him, he was quite particular that his doctorate should be said. So I was very happy because, he is uniquely, he got a doctorate at the age of 65. So I think we should give him a big clap. And his doctorate is on translational work. He has translated the works of Mahatma Gandhi as well as translated books on Mahatma Gandhi. So he is with the Manu for some time, and presently he writes a lot of articles, he speaks a lot about Hyderabad, he is very passionate, argumentative, insightful when it comes to topics on Hyderabad. So we will be very happy to listen to his insights today. And lastly, the topic also gained a lot of traction before the elections when a film was made on Razakars by some of the people in Hyderabad as an election, to take advantage perhaps of the election. But Razakars as an important factor in the whole Hyderabad 1948 also gave to an interpretation in that film. So with this few words and an introduction, I request Mohan Guruswamy to take over and moderate the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good evening. I had this video with Surendra Reddy to set the backdrop to the time and the event, and he's the last of the eyewitnesses to the account. And unfortunately, the history of Hyderabad in that transition has not been well written. You have a lot of partisan views on that. There's only one book which I came across by Benichu, which is a very good and balanced book. But most of the other books came waffling over because at the time, after the accession was over, I think Jawaharlal Nehru wanted to quickly forget this and put these events behind. And he moved very fast. He rehabilitated the Nizam, made him the governor, Raj Pramukh, and quickly Hyderabad was dismembered into three bits. 48%, which was Telangana, went to Andhra, one part went to Karnataka, and one part went to Maharashtra. So there's no Hyderabad state left. But in 48, Hyderabad was the biggest province in the country, 81,000 square kilometers, bigger than UP is today. And without Hyderabad, there could have been no India. It would have been a big hole in the middle. And so there was no question of Indian Union being complete without Hyderabad. So, and then of course, the basis of partition was Hindu-Muslim, and Hyderabad was predominantly Hindu, 82%, 83% Hindu. And so there's no question of getting, as Surendra Reddy himself very said, there was a division, cleavages were very clear in society. And talking about that period in 48, 47, 48, my father had come back from the war and was in the Hyderabad civil service, and he was posted back, joint service here, and in 47, end of 47, my mother, my sisters, and my brother all had to move out from here. They moved off to Vellore because it was, as he said, unsafe. And matter of fact, our house in Secunderabad got raided one evening, and raiders came to the house. So it was uncertain times, and we in Hyderabad tend to forget this because we don't know about this, because not much written about it. And so we're going to discuss, so there was a liberation, there was a feudal state. Out of this 81,000 square kilometers, the Nizam owned 10%. The Paiga families who ruled, who collected taxes on behalf of the Nizam, owned another 30%. And then they had the Samastans and the landlords and the Nawabs and Jagirs who owned another 30%. So these peasants had only about 10%, 12% of land with them. So it was a highly feudalized state. Out of the government in 1941, according to the Civil Service report, which I have a copy with me, there were 1,571 officers of the Nizam's government, 1,100 were Muslims, 271 were Hindus, and the rest were others, Parsis, Christians. And out of the 271, and there were only 5 covenanted officers from the 271. That means, they were in the civil service officers, only 5, including my father. And my father used to say that when he joined service, he had to wear a sherwani and a fez. And documents would come in Urdu, and they had to be well versed in Persian. So it was a Muslim feudal system. After all, the Nizam was inherited, or he took this part away from the Mughal Empire. He was the Mughals' governor, the Nizam-e-Sarkar here in Hyderabad. So it was very clear what kind of a system, and then who would want that kind of a system to go. And a lot of Hindu landlords also were in favor of the Nizam. They were in favor of, because they were worried about this socialist Jawaharlal Nehru coming and talking about land reforms and all these things. For instance, Pingal Venkatram Reddy, who Surendra Reddy alluded to, his sister's father-in-law, and also my wife's granduncle, they were all signatories to the idea of having an independent state. And Venkatrama Reddy was arrested after police action and was kept in house arrest for a year. So there are a lot of the traditional landlords also made the transition to. And the first thing, of course, General Chowdhury had done was he had land reforms. So Nizam was told that no more sarf-e-khas. You can have a list of assets which you own, your property, immovable property with you, that you can have, but the land goes. So the 40% was taken away in one shot. Then Jagirdari was abolished, and land reforms came first to any part of the world here in Hyderabad. The land was redistributed among the peasants and serfs. Even from my Mudaliar family side, they were Jagirdars who lost their land. Suddenly they were, people who my father used to say, that we had to take appointments to meet them. Suddenly they were knocking on your door and sitting in your veranda because times had changed completely. So there was a transition in Hyderabad which I think took place very quickly and very fast. So with that little backdrop, we must be clear that, what kind of a government we had, what kind of a system we had. So to that extent, it was a liberation. Liberation from a feudal order. But our friends, Kishan Reddy and company, are not celebrating that liberation from the feudal order. They've got their eyes on Asaduddin Owaisi, who rules one part of the city, and 8 assembly constituencies and 1 parliament constituency is with him all the time. And so they're focused on Asaduddin. So this targeting of saying that we're liberating, and the MIM today was the party of Qasim Rizvi. But just as, but then, the RSS didn't support Quit India also. They didn't take part in 1942. And they didn't want to have any part. I've got the documentation on that to take part in the freedom movement. They said, we have to concentrate on making Hindu society strong, that we shouldn't get distracted by all this. And Savarkar and company were actually, when Gandhi was against the war, against helping the British, Savarkar and all were recruiting for the British Army. So there are different roles, times were different. We've got to put the past behind. And if we carry that baggage, then we'll be divided again. So, but some people don't want that past to be forgotten. They're reviving it in a different way. So with that, I had this eminent gentleman here to speak. My friend Arjun Subramaniam will speak on the military operations which began the new Hyderabad. And then, of course, we have our historian and we have a commentator from Hyderabad. So I think we have a good discussion going on. And I'm the man with the bell. So at 10 minutes, I will ring once to give you a caution.
Kamala Harris and Trump kind of a situation wherein mics have to be muted. So thank you Mohan. Thank you very much for this invitation to speak this evening. And it's my first time over here, and it's nice to see a full house. Now, lest you think that matters military can be spoken about immediately, it's really not correct, because you have to put matters military into the correct geopolitical and the political context. So one of the things that I wanted to share with all of you before we get down to why it was not really, in my opinion, a police action, but actually a full-fledged military action to liberate Hyderabad. So if you recollect that the process of amalgamating those 500 plus princely states into the Indian Union was a very, very laborious process. And there were 4 templates that were followed by all these princely states. The first one was an accession by recognition of geographical realities. So there were a large number of states that realized they had no other option but to accede to the Union of India, because that would be in their interests. The second was accession by inducement. So there were a few princely states that were reluctant to join the Indian Union, but then they were cajoled and they were induced to join it, and there was no problem. The third manner of accession was accession by coercion. So at the end of the day, there were 6 princely states that were recalcitrant and that were reluctant to join the Indian Union in different ways. You had Travancore, you had Hyderabad, you had Bhopal, you had Jodhpur, you had Junagadh, and you had Kashmir. So out of these states, Bhopal and Jodhpur were mildly coerced to join the Indian Union. There was no problem, right? Junagadh was coerced significantly, and you would be interested to know that there were 3 warships sailing towards the Kathiawar coast. There was an Air Force squadron in Jamnagar that was buzzing the princely state. there was a battalion of the Kumaon regiment that was ready to move into Junagadh in case the Nawab continues to act funny. But then I think good sense prevailed on him, and he decided to wing his way to Karachi on a jet with his dogs. Right? The fourth state, he was a dog lover. He had over 100 dogs with him. Yes, and with his, And now, as far as Travancore was concerned, the Prime Minister of the Travancore, C.P. Ramaswamy Iyengar, was quite an ambitious guy. And he reckoned that because Travancore has a coastal access, Travancore can declare its independence and stay free of India. But then I think the communists attacked him, and they almost assassinated him, and then good sense prevailed into the Maharaja of Travancore, and he acceded to the Union of India. So that left two states, Hyderabad and Jammu and Kashmir. Now in Hyderabad, the Nizam chose to conform to enter into a standstill agreement with New Delhi that would give him some breathing time to decide whether he wanted to join Pakistan or whether he wanted independence or what he wanted to do. And of course, all of you know what was happening in Jammu and Kashmir. Now, why was it that New Delhi or the freshly formed government of India delayed so long before initiating military action to ensure the liberation of Hyderabad? Now, there are 2 or 3 factors to this. Hyderabad was literally a cash cow for the British. And it was British intent significantly to delay the accession of Hyderabad for as long as possible. And therefore, not only the Governor General, but also the Army Chief, who was a British, of course, the Indian Army Chief, who was a British Indian Army Chief, convinced Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru that it would be preferable to enter into a standstill agreement with the Nizam. You are already preoccupied with military action in Jammu and Kashmir. So maybe negotiations and diplomacy would be a better way, and that is why K.M. Munshi was here as the resident to try and negotiate with the Nizam that it made sense to join the Indian Union. But actually speaking, Whitehall wanted to continue to milk the cash cow that was Hyderabad for as long as possible. Right? So militarily, the other reason I think why Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel were hesitant to significantly coerce the Nizam early on to joining the Indian Union was because there were false intelligence reports that were provided by the British to New Delhi indicating that the Nizam's army was quite powerful, he was negotiating for planes, he had tanks, that the Razakars and the militia were quite strong, and therefore maybe it was not wise for the Indians to engage, for India to engage in military action on 2 fronts, which is Jammu and Kashmir and then Hyderabad. So one thing led to another, and then in February 1948, I think there was stepped up military action against the Nizam's forces by the communists and the Andhra Hindu Mahasabha. Now, out of these 2 units, it was the communists who were more organized, and they managed to inflict a fair amount of damage on infrastructure, on power stations, and that was when reprisal killings also commenced by the Razakars. And that is when alarm bells rang in Delhi, and by March, both Panditji and Sardar Patel realized that diplomacy was not working and that it may be time to launch a military action into Hyderabad. Now, the British divisional commander here in Hyderabad, Major General Pert, was not very keen that military action be conducted, but his boss in Southern Command was very, very clear that it was time for India to move militarily, or else the situation would go from bad to worse in Hyderabad. And this is the letter that and this is what he wrote. And this is what he wrote immediately to the army headquarters in Delhi, in which he said, "An aging, headstrong, ill-advised and anachronous ruler is at the head, or nominally at the head of an autocratic and worn-out administration, on which the various political agitation and trends are exercising an ever-increasing weakening influence. Behind this crumbling administrative facade stands the Ittihad-ul-Muslimin, fanatical, unrealistic, and devoid of men skilled in public affairs. Engaged in a tussle with the Ittihadis are the communists and the Andhra Hindu Mahasabha, who are in semi-open revolt in the eastern districts of the state and the Satyagraha movement. Right? Now, so how did the military action? Now, this is another thing that I've always been astonished for the last many years, is how did the Indian government come up with the name police action? And how have we continued to propagate it in our history books that it was a police action? The action that the Indian state took against Hyderabad was a pure military operation meant to liberate Hyderabad. Meant to liberate Hyderabad and coerce the Nizam into acceding to the Union of India. Right? So, like was earlier mentioned, there were three areas from which the Indian army attacked. One was from the north. The next was from the west, from Sholapur, and the areas that they came in were Osmanabad, Bidar, Adilabad, and then Kurnool from the south. There were almost two divisions employed by the Indian army to do this under the overall command of Lieutenant General Rajendra Singh Ji, who was the GOC-in-Chief of Southern Command, and General J.N. Chaudhary, who was the divisional commander. Right? And that was the only armored division that the Indian army had, and that was deployed to move towards Hyderabad. There was some fierce fighting that took place, particularly around the airfield in Bidar. The Razakars had deployed their elite units in the north in order to oppose the Indian army. But it wasn't, the Indian army was probably far too professional, and they overwhelmed all resistance. And as all of you know, 17th September is celebrated as Liberation Day. What you would be also interested in knowing is that Operation Polo also comprised the Indian Air Force. The Indian Air Force operating out of Pune bombed Bidar, it bombed Warangal, okay? And in fact, I must narrate an incident to you that was that I had in conversation with General Zaki. Many of you would be knowing General Zaki, a very illustrious 8th generation family, military family from Hyderabad. His father, he was a young boy who could not go back to boarding school in January because of Mahatma Gandhi's assassination, and therefore his father was a brigadier in the Nizam's army. He was the sector commander of the sector that was in Gulbarga, and he remembers that one day when he was traveling in a jeep with his father going to his father's headquarters, there was an Indian Air Force aircraft operating out of Pune, which was a Tempest aircraft. Those days there were only Spitfires and Tempests. So this aircraft came all along the road and literally strafed the convoy that was traveling. And then this young boy and his father jumped out of the jeep and took refuge on the side. I also wanted to read to you some comments by Qasim Rizvi. Now, Qasim Rizvi could largely be held responsible for not allowing the Nizam to sign the instrument of accession. There are reports that suggest that the Nizam was veering towards joining the Indian Union, but Qasim Rizvi repeatedly impressed upon him that you have the wealth and you have the power, you have your Arab militia in order to form an independent state of your own, even if you do not want to join Pakistan. Right? And this is what he felt about everything. So Qasim Rizvi says, and he says, on the day prior to the Indian army moving in, the Razakar chief Qasim Rizvi raised his battle cry at a public meeting at a town named Biloli by playing the communal card. And he said, the sovereignty enjoyed by the Nizam cannot be taken away by any power on earth. We Muslims of Hyderabad are today faced with difficult problems which will decide our fate. We should neither be discouraged nor disheartened on account of the measures adopted by the Indian Union to demoralize us. We should face our enemies with courage and determination. Right? That was his take on the situation as it was evolving. And finally, I want to dispel the thought that both Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Sardar Patel were practically on the same page as far as Hyderabad was concerned. And when I say the same page, both Panditji and Jawaharlal Nehru felt that application of force to force the accession of Hyderabad must only be used as a last resort, and let us do whatever we can to convince the Nizam through diplomacy and negotiations to join the Union of India. And this is what Panditji spoke in Parliament. So the altruism of Jawaharlal Nehru, his abhorrence of violence and empathy towards the people of Hyderabad was clearly evident in his statement on Hyderabad to Parliament on 7th September. He urged the Nizam for the last time to disband the Razakars and to facilitate return of Indian troops to Secunderabad. So in the final analysis, unlike Jammu and Kashmir, where there was some dissonance between Panditji and Sardar Patel, when it comes to Hyderabad, both of them exercised a lot of patience until there was no other way but to resort to military action. And finally, I wanted to leave you with a thought as to why do you think we've continued to call the action today in Hyderabad as a police action and not a military action. It is because inherently we've always wanted to be seen as a responsible and restrained state, and at that particular time we didn't want to raise hackles in the rest of the world to say that the Indians are using indiscriminate military force in order to force the accession. So that's the reason why this police action has remained in our history books, whereas actually the fine print of it is a full-fledged, meticulously planned military operation called Operation Polo. Thank you very much.
Okay, at the outset, I thank the Guruswamy Center for the invitation, of course, to Mohan Guruswamy and also all the panelists, my co-panelists for this discussion, and friends in the audience. I'm a little nervous because I could see all senior Hyderabadi places here. Whatever I'm going to offer is just only from historical records, but I'm sure some of you must have experienced the incident, witnessed the incident. Okay, so having said this, the topic given for today's discussion is liberation, Hyderabad, September 17, liberation or integration. So, Guruswamy ji wants to just confine to this that what is it exactly, So this narrative, of course, in recent time, it's a very wide spread, and all groups we have various interest groups. Everyone is trying to take mileage out of it. We have a kind of a historian called E.H. Carr who said, one should not have nostalgia for your past, but you should see how best you can exploit your past. So that's what is happening now. Now basically, our political parties are trying to exploit our past and trying to by making a kind of a narrative of their own interest, and it has a larger implication on the society, and we are worried. Hyderabad, Deccan has a great history of cultural synthesis, and as a Deccani, as a Hyderabadi, the anxiety is what would happen to this culture. Okay, so I mean, Arjun Subramaniam ji has actually explained this, and even the video which we watched, but the what was actually happening during that time. I don't want to go into that, but I'll try to give you how this narrative had developed over the time in history. So it is not just today BJP is talking about liberation. Okay, so liberation again understood differently. I mean, what Marxists understands this as liberation from feudal, I mean, monarch, autocratic rule, or feudal lords, landlords, whereas the Sanghis understand this as a kind of liberation from the Muslim rulers. So and now the Congress and various other political groups try to see it's just only integration. Okay. So even after the police army action, I should say that. So it was basically army action, and there are two major books actually which were written by the insiders. One is Laikali, Tragedy of Hyderabad. The other was End of the Era by Munshi. Okay, so both actually represent two different views. And a recent book by A.G. Nuranisa tried to give kind of a balanced view of the whole incident. So I largely agree with Nuranisa that what has happened on 13/17 is an unfortunate thing, which it shouldn't have happened. Okay, fact that Hyderabad are going to integrate or merge or access to Indian Union, but because of some personalities, okay, some elements, this bloodshed had actually happened. And I must, as a historian, I can tell you there were, I think we should hold responsible 4 personalities. One is Qasim Razvi, Jinnah, and Munshi, and the other person is Patel. These 4 personalities who are actually responsible for bloodshed occurred or happened in Hyderabad. Okay, so having said this, let me tell you how this narrative of liberation actually started. It's not just only now BJP is speaking. This goes back to early 19th century, early 20th century. So this was started by the regional language nationalists. Okay, Telugu nationalists, Marathi nationalists, and Kannada nationalists. Okay, so it was developing as a kind of response to Urdu. Urdu was made official language in Hyderabad state in 1883, and then education institutions were Darul Islam was set up, and all these schools were set up in Urdu medium and all that. Of course, there were English medium schools set up by missionaries and all that. So, but as a part of developing their language, they started this movement, Telugu nationalists, Marathi nationalists, and all that. There was a Parshas, Telugu, Maratha, Kannada, Parshas. And they were promoting their language, setting up regional language, schools, and all that. So this movement actually started as an anti-Urdu movement, and then anti-Nizam, and then anti-Muslim by 40s. So and particularly Telugu nationalists and Maratha nationalists were in the forefront in making this narrative. And the entry of the Arya Samaj was very, very interesting. Arya Samaj actually started by Dayananda Saraswati as a cultural movement in Punjab. So, and unfortunately, it turned into a political movement when it comes to Hyderabad. Arya Samaj came to Hyderabad state somewhere in 1893. Then started, twisting, things, apart from the, reviving, Hinduism and the, modern light. They started, showing seeds, communal seeds in the minds of the, Hyderabadis and Dakkanis by celebrating Ganesh festivals in Hyderabad. It was in 1905, first Ganesh festival happened in Hyderabad in 1905. Okay, that was a kind of triggering point. And then they were actually creating kind of communal ideas spreading around. There was a Hanuman Vyamasalas. Okay, they were also actually working under the shadow of Arya Samaj and all that. That was also one of the other Hindu communal element. Okay, so these were going on and on and on. So and of course Dulpet incident which happened in 1938 was the first communal incident in Hyderabad. So by then there was huge communal riots across the country, particularly UP, Bihar, Bengal and Punjab, Lahore. But there was no single incident in Hyderabad till 38. So how this happened? This was the Maratha Arya Samajis actually killed 4 Muslims in Dulpet area. And these Muslims were somewhere relatives to Badri Arjun, the head of the Majlis party. So, I mean, so that was the another trigger. And by then, the whole movement, Telugu movement particularly, and then simultaneously they were also running a library movement to promote Telugu literature and all that. So, very interesting thing is, this Telugu nationalists, Maratha nationalists, Kannada nationalists were also member of the Arya Samaj. Okay, and even socialists were also members of this. Congress nationalists were also member of this association. So this was a very fragile, very problematic kind of platform. Everyone had connection with this, and they were actually spreading this communal ideas. So when actually the times are so I'm a professor, so if I start, I'll speak only for I'll stop only after 1 hour because that is how my body clock is set. Yeah. Okay. So so this library movement is supposed to be promote Telugu literature, also contributed a lot to this. And when basically Indian Army entered into Hyderabad from Solapur and Osmanabad, these people actually went to these border areas, attacked on Muslims. Okay, so I mean, so and they saw this as a kind of liberation from the Muslim ruler. That was the kind of narrative they built during that time as well. So what BJP speaking today is not new. It was already built, and now again they are recirculating this narrative in a different way. So this okay. So but these Rajakars were not completely Muslims. Okay. So there were Dalits, there were many Hindus part of this Rajakars. So one should not see that and communists who were fighting against the Rajakar. There were many Muslims. Okay, so this there is a propaganda that it was a kind of only Muslims attacking Hindus. It was not that. Now the Retd was talking all that, but it was these Reddis who were actually using these Rajakars to attack on the Marxists. Okay, so daytime they will enjoy in their gadis, meat, daru and all that, and nights they will go and attack on the Marxists. So that's how actually it was happening. Okay. So, I mean, sir, one has to understand, and our present generation doesn't know many of these facts. Okay, so when the army came, so when we talk about even Marxian understanding as a liberation, the attack was on Rajakars and communists. Okay, my grandfather used to tell me, that how they fought with the Indian army. Okay. They were left houses and hiding in hills for months together. So there were camps everywhere in the Telangana villages. They were searching for, and they were harassing our women, anything like. So if you say it is liberation, liberation from whom and what kind of liberation it is? Means there was a bloodshed. Sundarlal report, if you see, it's just only 30,000 or so. But one of the American-based newspaper reports that something about more than 3 lakhs. So nobody actually counted the heads. They were just assuming that this many might have killed. Many lost their both Hindus and Muslims lost their properties, everything. So it was a complete bloodshed. Okay, so there was a possibility to avoid this, but as I told you, these 4 members were actually responsible for this bloodshed. Okay, they were instigating this. By June, Nizam agreed. There was agreement. They were about to sign, and everything was agreed between India and Hyderabad, but still they shown some statement by Rajvi that Rajvi almost declaring independence and all that, and then they have shown this Marxist activities as a kind of hava. Hyderabad is completely going out of our hands. That was the kind of misreports, actually misrepresentations or sent to Indian government. So Nehru was never for the police action. Okay, never he was for if necessary. He always says he will take some force action. Okay, if necessary. Okay, so but the moment Munshi came to Hyderabad, he designed this police action. His first meeting with Patel. In his first meeting with Patel, he mentions about this police action, army action. Then Patel also taken back and okay, can we do like this also? So he was thinking, and then by February things were moving towards that. I think Nehru came to know somewhere in April or May about this army action. He inquired. He was not even communicating with Patel. He was communicating with the Patel secretary, PP Meena. So so he asked him whether is such and such kind thing happening. So then he explains him. So that was the kind of thing. So one has to understand this carefully. Now the thing we supposed to debate is had we avoided this kind of bloodshed. So that's the important thing. And this liberation, integration, of course, it's very much integration into Indian Union. But the way it happened is disastrous. Thank you so much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much, Mr. Guruswamy, Mr. Soham, everybody for having come here and having been invited. I am Syed Inam-ur-Rahman, photographer also. And I have taken upon myself probably the unpleasant task of trying to swim against the tide. Here, the discussion is about police action, discussion is about Razakars, discussion is about Nizam and his unwillingness to join the Indian Union. So for this to talk about, we have devised this evening, and it has been titled September 1948, Liberation or Integration. This, I feel, is a leading kind of a title, no offense. In fact, misleading also. Because if it is just integration or liberation, why can't it be forced annexation or forced accession? It was that. The Honorable Mr. Arjun has talked about Operation Polo. Operation Polo was the initial name, or was the name which we popularly known, but it was actually Operation Caterpillar, which was the later date thing, and that included the army's movement with aerial cover, Air Force cover. That came about. But prior to that, there was an undeclared operation which was going on, and quite interestingly, it was called Operation Kabaddi. Operation Kabaddi. The learned Dr. D.Lit. Panduranga Reddy, Captain Panduranga Reddy, he is very emphatic on that, and he says that that word is the record in the record of war history. And he is quoted even Rajendra Prasad, I think, and I had to confirm it with him twice. So Operation Kabaddi actually meant a planned movement into Hyderabad territory from the bordering districts, especially that of Maharashtra and Karnataka to some extent, and going in 10-15 kilometers inside and creating mayhem, breaking infrastructure, wearing the garb of Muslims and Arabs. Chaush log notorious the. Quite a bit of fear they used to inspire in the hearts of the local populace, and in their dress people would move in, and this has been written by none other than the SP of Akola district of that time, Mr. Rustumji, and Mr. Rustumji has said that his brief was to recruit home guards, put them into Razakar garb, and push them into Indian territory to create mayhem, give a bad name to the Razakar, and ultimately pave the way for the later date Operation Polo and whatever was to be done. I am not a Nizam acolyte. Way back in 73, I think I remember I told my mother that if the Nizam's rule were there, probably I would be a communist. So I am not a royalist, and I am not the type who will really succumb to any kind of such autocracy by anyone for that matter in modern times. But the facts have got to be talked about. So the bigger tragedy was not about the delayed accession, forced accession of Hyderabad. The tragedy was after the accession or after the conquest of Hyderabad, the bloodshed which went on, and which went on quite deliberately for a very long time, and all of that blame was put on the activities of the Razakars, when fact of the matter is that the bloodshed going on in the bordering districts of Maharashtra were hardly the play area of Razakars, really speaking. And as the Pandit Sundarlal report says, that Razakar bloodletting was only between the period 1947 August and 17 September 48. So in this period, the Razakars went a lot of spleen on those people who they suspected of siding with the Indian Union notorious characters. They referred to Andhra Pratinidhi Sabha and the Arya Samaj and Arya Pratinidhi Sabha. These people were notorious, and they had come with an objective of dividing Hyderabad, which they did, and did quite successfully and quite bloodily. It happened, and as Bhukya Sahab said, that their 1890s, the foundation of the Arya Pratinidhi Samaj in Udgir of Maharashtra was a very deliberate attempt to create discord by planting shakhas into various areas. So there were, in very short time, there were 18 shakhas in the city of Hyderabad itself, and some kind of troublemaking was definitely going on, so that for a later date conquest of Hyderabad there would be enough grounds. In Hyderabad, the Razakars, if they were supported by the Nizam, it was only because the Razakars had volunteered to defend the Hyderabad state from the depredations of the Indian Union people, and also from the people coming from the southern India side who were wanting to grab lands which were there in Hyderabad. There was a lot of rural unrest in the area, but not on account of the mismanagement of the Muslim ruler Nizam's administration, but on account of the forced sale or forced acquisition of lands by the Reddis, by the Deshmukhs, of the local people from whom they were extracting VETI, VETTI, which was a forced tax for going on for thousands of years and has no explanation at all. This was the forced labor that one has to leave his own fields and go to the Deshmukh's field and plow those fields if the Deshmukh was wanting that. So it was forced labor but unpaid also. So this grouse was already there, and the tides were changing after the World War II, and the people, the communism was the new nasha which was catching on to the people, and people in Andhra area, Madras Presidency area, they were eyeing these rich lands over here, and they wanted to really make a kill out of those lands by grabbing them. The Razakars volunteered to support the Jagirdars whose lands could be in danger, and they did support that and put a fear of the people who were coming in from south. I mean Vijayawada area or the Andhra Presidency area. But what was happening from the northern side, that is Maharashtra side, was that a deliberate kind of a discord was being created, and created to quite an extent. And as I told you, this kind of tactics were being adopted. And these are all on record. Congress people have talked about it, they have written about it, they have admitted about it. And the Razakar thing was, let me tell you gentlemen, it would be very pertinent, he quoted Mr. Noorani, for you to understand that the standstill agreement was still existing when Nizam was repeatedly writing about the fulfillment of the standstill agreement and giving themselves time to arrive at an arrangement, and that was not being given on one ruse or the other. And one demand by Indian Union was that Razakars are creating mayhem, and we want to come to the Secunderabad cantonment and take position there and quell the disturbances. So this Nizam was not agreeing to, because after 1947 he was clear that the Indian army should go back to its cantonments in the Indian Union. But the Indian Union was insisting on having their armies over here, and also wanting to quell the disturbances of the Razakars. This was being exchanged with the Nizam, and at that pretext, matters were getting delayed one after the other. In between, the invasion took place, and before that, what had happened, just to give you an instance, that in the year 1938, 17th August, I think, when Nizam celebrated his birthday, he released prisoners in jail. So out of 8,000 prisoners released from jail on that date, 7,000 were from out of Hyderabad state. So that means there were people who had moved in here to create problems. And this was same was the case later on with the Razakars also. And just to get an idea of what really the Razakars, how bad could have they been, can be gauged from the fact that in the parliamentary debate, I think Patel himself informed Pandit Nehru that they were altogether about 15,600 Razakars, and by 1950, 15,500 had been released. There were only about a few hundred, very few Razakars left in the jails. So when the Razakars were being released from jails en masse, how were the killings taking place all over the state when there were 40,000 Indian troops in the state positioned over there, and state was under military rule? Who were the people killing people in that period of time, 17th March 1948 to 30th March 1951? 914 murders took place. 250 assaults on police people took place. Hundreds of abductions took place. Who were the people doing it? If the Razakar, then the Razakar, why were they being released for heaven's sake? And who Razakar was left now to do all that? So there was much more to it than what has been told to us, and we have understood till now, and that needs to be looked into. And really the people who deserve to be felt sorry about are the people who died quite unnecessarily. And that unnecessarily was not because the people were wanting to take revenge, but there was also a monetary angle to it. There was a lot of land grabbing, there was a lot of property snatching, there was a lot of everything. And if you really read the statistics of all that, you can understand that Razakars were something like the weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which suited the purpose and were never found. So like that, Razakars were also bad people, quite probably, but a lot of bad people among those Razakars were also Hindus. And you need to understand the role of the Andhra Pratinidhi Sabha, you need to understand the role of other people, why Mahatma Gandhi disassociated himself from the Hyderabad National Congress, why Sarojini Devi said, as governor of UP, that this matter of Hyderabad is over, I understand, my king has lost, but I am glad that this matter is over. So she had all her sympathies for her elite ruler, who had more industries during his rule in Hyderabad than East and West Pakistan put together in the year 1949. One of the most advanced states with all the amenities of the modern day. It had underground sanitation, which Madras city did not have till the 70s. And you name it, there is just no mistake. But you have to give Razakar the bad name, to give a Nizam a bad name. To solve the case, I'll take just one more minute, sir. And when the Hyderabad invasion took place, the ambassadors of the big countries, US and UK and so on, they were informed that the Hyderabad army is moving in, the Indian army is moving into Hyderabad to save the Nizam from the communists. And when the the army was moving from Pune, General Rajendra Singh Ji, Lieutenant General, GOCNC, he told to his commanders that, gentlemen, you are going to Hyderabad to liberate the Nizam from the depredations of the communists and Razakars, in that order. But in the letters to the embassies, Razakar was not mentioned. So Razakars were very much there, probably bad people, especially I would say so, because as Muslims they may have done a lot of things which as a Muslim they shouldn't have done. But they did probably, but they were blamed much more for all the things to be happened. And then using their name, the Government of India's case in the United Nations, it got somehow lost, and because of the time difference, the meeting was scheduled for 11:30 over there, but here by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it was necessary to decide that the Nizam has surrendered or did not surrender. So Nizam was not willing to go to the Deccan Radio to make an announcement that the Indian army has come in, and I have asked them to come in and take position in Bolaram. When he was not agreeing to that, the good old Mr. K. Munshi has got quite a saga behind him, the original Hindutva man, the original WhatsApp factory. Nizam has so much money, he's got 10 bombs, 10 atom bombs he has already bought, and all this kind of fear psychosis. And people fear very easily in our country, they fear very easily. So all of that falsehood was going on. So when Razakars moved in, the Indian army moved in finally, it was not just the loss of Nizam's kingdom, it was the loss of the livelihood of hundreds and thousands of people. And that was quite unfortunate, but it was deliberate. Because in a jiffy like that, the drop of an eye, the university's medium of instruction changed. September, the police action happens. In November, December, the medium of instructions of a university changes. This is not done. This is not done. It happened that way, and there were so many things. Thousands and thousands of guns were put in the Fateh Maidan area because they were to be unarmed. All of those guns came into the police hands over here but the police were quite incapable of using them because the communists had been given their guns, more guns by the Razakars themselves, who were, instead of surrendering, they did that. So much mayhem got caused, and the government of India has never stood up and said, we are sorry that when we were in charge, we allowed so many murders to occur. So many jobs were lost, so many lives were changed, so much land was grabbed, and Nizam was not the only one. Bengal was wanting to have East and West Bengal together and an independent country. So many things had been said. Travancore about it should need to be said. That 1 second, just...
No, don't deviate.
I'm not.
That's it, you've used up your time, we have given you more than that, that's enough. Thank you.
One last thing, sir, for everybody's information. Travancore wanted to base its economy on that base product, chromium or something which was the base product for manufacturing atom bombs. And it was found in plenty. And Abul Kalam always wanted that to be used later on, but it was not. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Hyderabad needs to be looked up in proper perspective.
Yeah, I think we have got divergent views, insights, some exciting, some controversial, some useful, some informative, some thought-provoking. I request Mohan to give a wrap-up so that we'll take questions from all of you.
Well, we had 3 different perspectives. That was the purpose also, to get different perspectives. And of course, my friend Arjun gave us the official perspective, which is in the history books recorded that way, and he narrated it superbly. It's to the fact, actually, when you write history, you can always pick facts, and Ghayur Sahib has got his own facts, so, you can, these days, you didn't have to read history books to create facts. You can imagine lots of things. Incidentally, thorium in Kerala is still there. And it's still there. You can't process thorium into fissile material, and it's not been done. And Dr. Bhakya had an interesting perspective of who was responsible for the violence. That's also true. But I actually hold the Nizam responsible because the man was vacillating. He wanted to be independent. He never said so. He encouraged the Razakars on one side. He transferred money to the Pakistani High Commissioner in London. He gave money to arms to the gun runners like Joseph Cotton to buy weapons. He was running arms in from Saudi Arabia and from Pakistan into Hyderabad, landing in Hakimpet. So you're doing all this on one side. On one side you've got Razakars, one side you're talking to the Indian Union, one side you've got talking to K.M. Munshi. And this is the tradition of the Nizams. When the British Army, when Wellesley was marching on to Tipu Sultan, the Nizam also marched with him, but stopped at Vanparti. He was, they had this way of saying, what is to their advantage. And I think, if you look at it in the 40s, after the Ottoman Empire collapsed, the Caliphate was vacant, and Hyderabad, the Nizam of Hyderabad, who was then on Time magazine's cover as the richest man in the world, was actually hoping to become the next Caliph. And he had his sons married to 2 Turkish women, and to establish one was Abdul Majid's daughter, who was the last Ottoman Sultan. And so, he had these ambitions also. So I think, but events of history were moving too fast. Liberation of India was taking place, not just Hyderabad. India was under a feudal system, like Hyderabad's landowning system was replicated all over the country. What was happening in Rajasthan? Who owned land in Rajasthan? Who owned land in UP? Who owned land in Bengal? The liberation of India meant that power had come for the first time to the majority of people of this country. Feudal lords who were running, whether Hindu or mostly Muslim, were very small numbers. They controlled society as a whole. What democracy brought was, it brought the majority to power for the first time. And that was true liberation. So therefore, I consider 47, 48 as liberation from the past, from the feudal era, that allowed this country to be conquered from time to time by small groups of bands coming from the west. And finally, the ultimate degradation was that you were captured by a commercial company. So, what brought us to that past was, that power was always in the hands of small numbers of people who were willing to trade for their advantage. People like the Nizam of Hyderabad, people like the Maharajas of Travancore and Jodhpur and Jaipur and all these people who marched with the Mughal armies. Who were his armies? Who was Raja Jai Singh? So our history is also convoluted, and I think for the first time after 47 we got ourselves the beginning of a new history. How long we'll go on this path, we'll have to see. 75 years have gone by, and there's serious challenge to that order of, a country of equals, a country where your private beliefs don't matter in public policy. Whether this will stay for long, we don't know. Let's see. But I think it was an interesting discussion. There was a lot of some light and a lot of fire. And there's always, when there's fire, there's a little light. And thank you, Som, for organizing this. It was Som's initiative. And after this, we have a question Q&A. We have some time.
And whom you are asking.
Yes, thank you, sir. My name is Kamal. I'm a PhD candidate at JNU. Thank you to the panel for a very enriching session. So my question was, the police military action began on 13th September. And Jinnah actually passed away on 11th September. So I'm wondering if there's a connection between these two events, or would you see this as a coincidence?
There is a view that Jinnah's passing away sort of pulled the carpet under the Nizam's leg. But then I would reckon, as a historian, to say that I think this operation was being planned from February, March onwards. The moment the violence in the Hyderabad state increased, right, and the moment Delhi started getting alarmed that maybe military action is the only way. So I think, irrespective of whether Jinnah was alive or no more, I think the military action would have continued. Would you like?
Yes, yeah. Actually, not the Jinnah's passing away, but it was the Mountbatten's return to UK in June. Yeah. So through Nehru was actually holding things through Mountbatten. Okay, and he was trying his best to convince Nizam that no, you join Indian Union. Okay, so actually when the delegation goes to Delhi after Mountbatten left, so people actually, it was like Ali only. So I think VP Menon or VP Menon, somebody actually laughs at him that the agreement is in a sarcastic way. What happened to when like Ali asked what happened to agreement. By then there was an agreement between Indian government and Hyderabad to on how to proceed further after standstill agreement. So then when he asks, they makes a very, it's gone in water, something like that. Okay, so Mountbatten leaving India was actually set things, made it very clear. So that's how it happened actually.
Actually, I was wondering Thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. Actually, I was wondering that there is a politics over whether it is integration, liberation, or somebody calling it a democratization. Okay, but majority of your speech or lecture was on from the dominant perspective, whether what Nehru said, what Munshi said, and what Nizam, what Arya Samaj has done, because Arya Samaj, our library movement, was constituent of the elite sections of the society. But the politics that provoked or that came from the grassroots in Telangana, which shaped, later Indian politics. If you look at land reforms in India, whatever, the Bhudan movement led by all these things. So how do we characterize this, the people's perspective, moving beyond the integrations and liberation?
Okay, yeah, good question.
And the other question is what today Telangana government has come up with a new idea that People's Governance Day. Is it more relevant, or can we adopt it? And how do we observe and absorb the people's struggle? It is unfinished agenda. It's not yet integration, it's not yet liberation from the people's point of view. Initially they fought with the Nizam, they fought with the Razakars, they fought with the Indian military. If you look at many biographies of Indian political leaders from this particular reason, they will tell the struggle about how they were associated with the Congress, what was the necessity to initially support the Nizam, then with the Congress, because they were looking for their property, their political interest, and they were resisting communist movement, people's movement. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, okay. So, so the narrative of liberation or integration was basically confined to elites and urban centers. As you said, it's right. Okay, but this is what actually is setting the tone. Okay, public opinion basically created by only intellectual class or the elite or dominants in the society. Coming to the other question, the people's politics, what happened to people policy. So my research on Hyderabad state, the peasant armed struggle was basically started against the local landlords. Okay, it was essentially a kind of movement of tribals and OBC, present BC communities basically. And then later on, Andhra Mahatsabha, some communist from Vijayawada comes and goes to this area and convert the movement against the Nizam. Okay, so and then of course by then Rajakars also enter into the scene, and Nizam police also enter into the scene in support of the local landlords. Okay, and there was a fight between people, and so it was like. The local landlords, gundas, rajakas, and police one side, and the village was the other side. So it was happening something like that. So then, but after the army action, then again the attack was on the people. Okay, attack was on the people. I mean, the what do you say? Communist or whatever it is. So, but people were attacked and killed, raped, all kinds of things were happening after the army action. So, how do we see this? That's the question.
I just wanted to ask, there are so many books on history in Hyderabad, sir. More than half a dozen, or more than 8 of them. What Mr. Ghayur said was from Captain Panduranga, and what others said were from Liaqat Ali Khan. So how do we go about it? It's something like the Arabian Nights, you never know what's happening. And the Alif Lara ki Dastan, that's what I want to know. What is the truth?
Generally, people think that history talks about the truth, sir, but every historian have their own truth. Okay? So basically, we interpret on the facts. So we tell our opinion based on the facts. So there is a different way of understanding historical facts. We connect all the facts, basically connecting dots, and draw some inference from the thing. So was Nizam adamant to join Indian Union? Okay, so if you look at this, yeah, it appears something like that.
But if you connect all those things, I mean, all the acts and the way he is dealing with the Indian Union, you feel that by June, he come to a conclusion that yeah, I'm gone. I have to surrender with Indian Union. So that was the kind of mindset. So one thing his worry was. One is his property. I mean, if Indian Union access Hyderabad, what will happen to? No, because everyone was actually frightening him about his property. I mean, so once Indian Union comes, then all your properties will go. That was the kind of thing. And then also he was trying to negotiate with the Indian Union some kind of autonomy for Hyderabad. Can he exist within the Indian Union with some autonomy, like Kashmir got. So that was the kind of thing happening in his mind after June. So he was using Rajakars for his own interests. Okay, Rajakars were doing all kinds of ruckus and bloodshed. Okay, so all that was also happening. Yeah.
So I just wanted to quickly answer the question that you asked. So as a historian, the accuracy of my research and my findings and my analysis is based on the veracity and the availability of archival primary sources of information. Now, in our Indian contemporary historical landscape, we've been very, very poor at archiving our primary sources of information, and therefore, most of us historians have to rely on a limited amount of primary sources of information, a lot of secondary sources of information, and a lot of conversational, experiential understanding of the situation, which I then triangulate to arrive at the most probable action. For example, if I want to understand about what happened in Hyderabad, depending on the stamina that I have as a historian, I will interview maybe, or I will speak to 10, 11, 12, 15 different people, and then arrive at a triangulation method at the most probable cause or most probable occurrence in case there is no primary sources of material to validate what I say.
My name is Mehboob sir. I'm a lawyer, trainer and consultant from Hyderabad. I have a very similar question on Sundarlal committee. So Indian government is very prompt, even before someone steals money, the ED knocks the door of the house. So abhi committee jo thi 1948 se it took 2013, 65 years to give a conclusive report on that. Like what happened, why it took so long? That's my question. 65 years.
That's how well-known he came. Sundarlal committee was given immediately.
No, Sundarlal.
Not published. That's a different matter.
Yeah.
I was told that the Sundarlal report was in the Nehru Library in Delhi. I knew the director of the library, Dr. Hardev Joshi, very well. And Hardev Joshi was a close associate of Mr. Chandrasekhar, former Prime Minister. And through him I came to know Joshi, and I used to use the Nehru Library quite extensively for my work. So I asked him about Sundarlal report. So he said, report to tha idhar, but it is now been restricted, highly restricted. But fact is that after police action, after the military action, there were reprisals, particularly in the western side of the state where the Hindu Mahasabha was active. There were a lot of killings taking place there. And people like my father and my father's good friend Shukmallar, who was the IG of police here, they both confirmed that killing did take place. And they went as a part of the government later on to this district and said there were revenge killings also, because the Razakars also played havoc. So when the Indian army came in, behind the Indian army, the Savarkarites and the Hindu Mahasabha groups also became active. But it was not as made out to be later. It was not official action that the army went out and pulled villages out and shot them and killed them. First of all, There are only 10% population of Muslims in the state, and most of them are concentrated in Hyderabad. Even today in Telangana villages, you hardly see very many Muslim families. Concentration of Muslims is in the urban center. So that the Indian Army went out sweeping and looking for people is totally false.
Again, I would like to just add on to what Mohan has just said, is that before we make sweeping accusations of participation of the Indian Army in the post-liberation activities, one must actually pause for a moment to look at the kind of reputation that the Indian Army has gathered over the last many, many decades. I must tell you a small story of what Indian Army units did in Italy in World War II. So, Sikh battalions were part of the 8th Army that had captured Italy. And when the Allies went into Italy, the women of Italy, many, many villages in Italy, banked on Indian Army units, Indian soldiers, to protect them from the other allied soldiers, the Canadians, the Americans, the British, right? And I think I can unequivocally say that the Indian Army was not involved in any kind of reprisals here in after the Hyderabad liberation. In fact, they were involved in helping the local administration that was finding its feet by being deployed at various parts of the state. So I think one must be a little careful before making sweeping comments about the role of the Indian Army in the liberation of Hyderabad.
I agree with that. The Indian Army did not do anything, but there were army units of the princely states. 8 princely states were part of the Indian Army. They were they were in the rear guard, and with their help and the local people, Radhakars, in the name of Radhakars, havoc was wreaked, and then there were reprisals, so to speak. But people were letting their spleen, they were taking revenge, and there was a lot of looting also, which went to the benefit of the people who looted. And the Sundarlal report, as is being asked, was when it was actually sanctioned by Pandit Nehru to the most respectable person that he thought, that was Pandit Sundarlal and other panel members. They said, go and find out what really has happened, because Padmaja Naidu was constantly telling Nehru that there are killings going on over there. So when that report was made public, and it was sent to Mr. Patel. Mr. Patel said that nobody authorized you to go and do that, do this report, nothing doing, this has got no sanction of government of India, because the official sanction was not there. Orally everybody was told to give all the support to them. Even General Chaudhary made all the arrangements for those people to go house to house and list out names of the women abducted, women raped, women killed, properties looted and all that. So it was a most elaborate report, but Mr. Patel saw to it that it did not see the light of the day for years and years together, until somewhere in 1988, my late lamented friend Umar Khalidi, who has been quoted in so many books, he brought out excerpts of it, and it was said that one of the persons here, well-known figure of that time, he had some excerpts of it, but finally it came out fully in the late 90s, I think.
No, that's only dropped. That's not original, that's only dropped.
I would think. What Khalidi brought out, or this finally was given?
No,
it was never released. It was never released. It's not an official report. And Khalidi had, I also knew Umar Khalidi, he had his own agenda. The Americans sent him after 9/11.
I would say that, yes, I too condemned him for that. Having come here on State Department's money.
Came here on Sid, and he started pushing out all these stories of Sundarlal report, etc. But Sundarlal was a self-starting report. A couple of former congressmen came out and said, this is what happened. And that did happen. Reprisal killings took place, but I don't know where this figure of 40,000 came from.
Even 3 lakhs have been mentioned.
And Hardev Joshi.
No, it was mentioned by American newspapers.
Yeah, Haridev Joshi, who read the report, which was in his custody, Then he said, "ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, killings तो हुए, but not the numbers you are talking about."
My name is Anupam Shukla. I am from JNU, PhD candidate. So I would like to ask from Professor Sir, you blamed 4 people for this. Why you missed Nehru? And next question is that, sir, your perception is very different from Arjun, sir. So I really wanted to know that what you would suggest if what Patel has taken action, what he could have done different so that the accession would have been peacefully.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Kashmir accession happened in October, okay? And police action on Hyderabad, army action on Hyderabad happened in September. So, 1 year later. Yeah. So a similar kind of thing would have done with Hyderabad as well. There was a possibility. So in actually a draft agreement, which supposed to be signed after standstill agreement, was already prepared. So
Complicated in Kashmir because it got delayed. Don't you think it would complicate this thing also?
No. Hyderabad, I mean, actually. Nehru was buying time with Hyderabad. I mean, it won't go anywhere. I mean, okay, it's a landlocked and the kind of advantage Kashmir had, Hyderabad didn't have. So the whole Nehru's first focus was on Kashmir and Junagadh. So then after they done with that, they focus on the Hyderabad. But just now we got freedom from a foreign country, and if we again use our own army and our own people, then it would give a different signal to the world countries. So that was Nehru's understanding. And as far as I know, Nehru was never for army kind of force action on Hyderabad. Okay, so only when things were going out of hand, he was not able to convince things because the kinds of report going to Indian government was such that everything is gone. Hyderabad is gone. Okay, Rajakars and leftists have taken some part, and Rajakars have taken some part. So Nizam is in the hands of the Rajakars. So these are the kinds of reports every day was sent to Home Department. So based on that, when you have black and white, some papers in front of you, you can't say anything. So it was an inevitable kind of situation. So that is how, ultimately Nehru also noted for army action. That is how army arrived to Hyderabad. What was the first? The 4 people, yeah. So 4 people, Nizam. So start from the standstill agreement. When Nizam wants to do standstill agreement with Indian Union, it was the Razvi and Jinnah was spoiling the whole game. Okay, so every time when Nizam comes with a new idea to actually negotiate with the Indian government, his whole thing was first he wanted to negotiate with the Indian government. Okay, but these 4 people I mentioned was spoiling the game. Yeah, that is how. Yeah, that is how I say they were responsible for this. This wouldn't have happened. The bloodshed. My question is VP Menon was a very gentleman. He was in the sense going by the correspondence between Hyderabad and Indian government, he was a good person. Yeah, it was the Munsi basically, the main culprit basically. Yeah, no, from the very day one, he was actually thinking of this force action.
And thank you so much for coordinating so well. Dr. Arjun, my question is basically, repeatedly you mentioned about the fact that land reforms that General Chaudhary actually initiated immediately as one of the first acts to actually neutralize the communist story that was impending on the state, because of which I think the Nizam was forced to act. And the second part that came out, thanks to our participant when he says about Jinnah having passed away just a few days before police action, that brings in a new story. Maybe Jinnah was influencing and getting the Razakar leader over here to actually put pressure on Nizam on a regular basis. That seems to be a reality if I look at that in context. But where does this entire land reform story stand today? Because I think even when Narasimha Rao became the chief minister, there was still a big problem happening at that time, and we still see the same problem happening over here. How effective was it that the army's intervention and the distribution of land, okay, the bulk happened at that point, but beyond that, what has been the state's performance? I'm Sanjay Gadale, by the way. Thank you.
So I don't think I'm the right person to talk about land reform. So maybe Guru.
I think the first phase of land reform was abolition of Zamindari and Jagirdari, which took place in 52. Completely wiped out in one stroke. Then you had large holdings of patta land. That went under ceilings, Narasimha Rao's time. And ceilings also were quite generous with 10 acres of wetland or 54 acres of dry land. I don't think there are more than a handful of people with that much of land in Telangana or anywhere. Land reforms have by and large succeeded in India. And one of the reasons why we, in spite of having the largest acreage in the world, arable irrigated acreage, we have such low productivity. Because land holdings are much too small. The average size of an Indian landhold is 1/3 hectare. The average size of the Indian landholding. And they're getting fragmented in each generation. Because, all children get equal shares. So I get a lot of time to observe land holdings in my area where I have a farm. And everybody is in 1/3, 2 acres, 3 acres, are big landlords. A guy in my neighboring village with 7 acres is considered as a big landowner. Because land itself has become so valuable now. So nobody is willing to part with land to a brother or a sibling. So land holdings have become very small. You see small bits of land growing paddy there.
With this interesting thing, one moot point, Qasim Razvi, the most notorious character, he was arrested, he was in jail, and then how did the state government after independence connive with the government of India and Qasim Razvi to make arrangements for him to reach the airport at Hakimpet and then fly to Pakistan? Please throw some light on that. Thank you.
No, he didn't fly out of Hakimpet. Sorry.
He flew out of Hyderabad. Well, things were arranged for him. Well, this is a part of history, Mr. Mohan. This is a part of history. Let us discuss this.
Let me tell you. He was in jail for a long time.
Okay, I mean, sir. Yeah.
I tell you, he was booked for dacoity, sentenced to. It's on. Sentenced to 7 years, and after his release, when his term was finished, my father's younger brother, Major Vishwanath, who was in the police service, he took him to Bombay and put him on a flight to Karachi because they didn't want him here. He was technically a free man. He could have stayed on in India if he wanted, but he was handcuffed and taken and put on a flight from Bombay and put on board a flight to Karachi, not from Hakimpet.
Absolutely right.
Hakimpet by then was an Air Force base.
He served his sentence.
He served his sentence. He was in Mashirabad jail. Chanchalgura.
Yerraguda jail mein the wo.
So anyway, whatever. But I remember my uncle went off very, very suddenly. He said, I've got to take this fellow to Bombay. And then my father said, be careful. He might bite you or something.
Myself, Ali Hussain, I am a research scholar, sir. Thank you very much for enlightening this session. I have a question to Rahman, sir. Sir, were there different kind of Razakars? Can you just throw some light on that?
Yes, sir. There were different types of Razakars. Captain Panduranga Reddy D. Lit, who got his thesis on this very subject and who was part of that unit, who became part of that unit which had first moved into Hyderabad, and he had access to all of the records, army records especially. Captain Panduranga Reddy, not a very liked person because he speaks very boldly in favor of Nizam. I don't speak in favor of Nizam as such. But he speaks very boldly and he very categorically says that they were Razakars of the Congress variety, they were Razakars of the Muslim variety, they were Razakars of the Gunda variety, of the Deshmukhs and the Reddy Zamindars, and they were Razakars also of the Home Guard variety. So many people donning the Razakar dress would go out and do whatever they wish to do and give bad name to Razakars only, which came in very handy for the government of India to contest its case in the United Nations. So all of those things happened and Razakars got much more bad name than they deserved to, and some people got away scot-free, especially the communists. In 1972, when Indira Gandhi announced pensions for freedom fighters, all of the communists became freedom fighters. They said they were the peasants' struggle against the Nizam and this and that. So everybody got their pension except Muslim freedom fighters who were genuine. Absolutely genuine Muslim freedom fighters against the Nizam also. My relative who got a parcel of land, I wouldn't want to name the place, and when he was told that you have spoilt your trucking business, flourishing business from Karimnagar, why don't you go and take the parcel of land being allotted by the government to freedom fighters? So he asked quite shockedly that freedom fighters are actually taking those land parcels from the government? Did they fight for the freedom for that purpose? I won't take it. Some years down the line, he got into dire need and people told him to go and ask for that land. And when he went there, he was told that the land was allotted to you, yes, but it has been given away to somebody else. So he said to that youngster, that kid, he fought for the freedom? No, I won't take it. So that land is worth hundreds of crores now. So some people who really fought for freedom did not get what they deserved, even in terms of recognition.
What is the condition of Nizam state forces and not Rajakar?
So the Nizam state forces were primarily designed or meant for internal security of the state of Hyderabad. They were designed to protect the Nizam's estates, to protect the cash crops, the areas around Hyderabad that were generating income for the Nizam. So the Nizam's forces were not really prepared or designed to fight the Indian army. So there was hardly any struggle, there was hardly any opposition given by the Nizam's forces, and that was the state of the Nizam forces. They were not professional, and they were only meant purely for the needs of the Nizam state. Yeah.
Melted on its own over a period.
Yeah.
So one small question, Mr. Rahman sir. The Nizam was not willing to accede, yet he was made Pramukh of Hyderabad state. What's the idea behind that, sir?
Raj Pramukh.
Yes, sir, he was not willing to accede, but he had tremendous popularity all over the world on account of being a premier Indian prince. That's one thing. Other thing is that relationship with the Ottoman royal family, matrimonial alliance. Other thing is his generosity towards various causes all over the world, including the Muslim world. So many things were there, and that is why Nehru was indeed reluctant to use force against the Nizam. But it had to happen sooner or later. It happened. It's so unfortunate. Shouldn't have.
And I understand after 56 also, Nehru asked him to continue as leader.
Very much so, sir. After 56 also, Nehru, but he declined because that Hyderabad state had to vanish from the map for the simple reason that the government of India wouldn't want the country to be divided on religious lines. But in 1956, the government of India was very happy to divide the states on linguistic lines. So I don't know what purpose that served. The syncretic culture of so many areas really went for a toss. Now everywhere there are talking, even in Maratha areas there are different talks, even in Telangana area there are different talks of regionalism. So it was not a right thing to be done. So he said, no, now that state is not there, I wouldn't want to become the Raj Pramukh. But one thing, even his successor, Nizam, the seventh successor, Nizam the eighth, Mukarram Jah, wanted to join the Indian army, and Nehru Sahib was willing to give him a chance in the Indian army, even make him an ambassador somewhere, or even make him vice president. But he did become a second lieutenant in the Indian army, but with lot of caution, the Indian army got him posted in the northeast somewhere so that he wouldn't be struck down by the blow of some fanatic.
When we talk about accession of Hyderabad with the Indian Union, if we go back thinking about Razakars and all those things which are they are being blamed or stopping the Nizam from getting into the agreement. So if we go back to the original party where he belonged to, like MIM created by Bahadur Yarjan, who expired in the year 1944. From 1944 to let's say about 47, in 3 years span, how did he, Qasim Razvi created such a big havoc? How did he manage to do that? That to a person from Lathur.
But the fact is, Bahadur Yarjan was a proselytizing Muslim leader, founder of the Majlis Ittihadul Muslimin. It was meant to a political party to advance the interests of the Muslim community. It was not open to all. It was a Muslim organization. And proselytizing was a part of its activity, to convert people. You must understand what Qasim Razi inherited. He inherited an organization which the Nizam was trying to control also and curb. So Qasim Razi stepped into the right place. He was at the right place at the right time, and he got it.
He was a great orator also. Yeah. He was a lawyer.
So you can't say that, Qasim Razvi turned the organization around. The turning of the organization took place after Salahuddin Owaisi's father became the president, and then he became political, abandoned a lot of
1956.
abandoned a lot of the old ideology. And it was not a proselytizing organization. And when Asad Owaisi talks today, you should hear him talk in Pakistan. And what he tells the Pakistanis is that तुम मेरी फिक्र मत करो, तुम अपनी फिक्र करो. मेरे पास तो संविधान है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन है, मेरी जमहूरियत है मेरे पास. तुम्हारे पास तो कुछ नहीं है. So, I think everybody gets a chance to change. The RSS, which was with the British till 40, 44, 45, is now a forefront of nationalism. So all these things happen. History has a way of changing things.
Let us give a big clap to and also a bigger clap to all of you for listening to us, sitting, asking, and enjoying. Thank you very much for a wonderful evening. Thank you so much. Have a good weekend, all of you.